You're not? You take out a photograph and you're moving out though.
I drive it through the street.
Driving through, somebody call and tell you. What with the other man?
Oh, Dennis.
No, not he. Ready?
Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to the PPP Weekly Press Conference. With me is our General Secretary. He'll be reading two statements, after which he'll be taking the question. Yes?
Morning again. The two statements that I have are as follows. The first one reads as such. The People's Progressive Party finds it strange, if not intriguing, that the Civic News, a newspaper known for its hostility to and a crusader against the PPP, would publish at this time, in its July 26 Sunday edition, a front-page story that harks back to the mid-1960s, headline, quote, Venezuela plotted to overthrow, kidnap of Jagan in 1964. U.S. document says, end of quote. On the surface, the story appears helpful and informative, but it is a dangerous, mischievous, and deceitful piece of journalism, as is the newspaper on whose pages it appeared. The expose has been published at a time when Guyana-Venezuela relations has reached an all-time low after many years of peaceful, friendly, and constructive relations, its ups and downs notwithstanding. What triggered the nosedive was Maduro's decree, which virtually hived off a significant portion of Guyana's territorial sea and made it part of Venezuela's national territory. The soured relationship between the two countries has been compounded by a series of blunders by Granger's government in the economic sphere, as well as by the belligerent and jingoistic postures adopted by the military-dominated coalition government. The publication of the expose is another manifestation of the concubinage between the Granger-led coalition and the Civic News, which is allowing itself to be used on this occasion as a vehicle to push a politically divisive and a historically revisionist view of the relation between the people of Guyana and Venezuela. Further, the publication of the expose, which the Civic News admits was available, quote unquote, some years ago, but to which it was alerted to by one of its quote unquote correspondents, appears to have been published as part and parcel of a carefully orchestrated attempt to achieve two main objectives. First, to put the PPP and its supporters in a psychological mode of discomfort with and hostility to the Venezuelan people, to deem them unforgivable for this quote-unquote unfriendly act, which, thanks to the Civic News, was revealed to them. Secondly, it is nothing but a bizarre attempt to place the blame on Venezuela and not elsewhere for the removal of Jagan and the PPP from government in 1964. It is important to recall that the Civic News was established with money provided by the Washington-based National Endowment for Democracy. The money was channeled to the founders of the newspaper through the Institute of North-South Issues. Small wonder why the Civic News would want to peddle such dated information at this juncture when Guyana-Venezuela relations is taking a beating from both sides. whose interests the publication of the exposé served must be answered by the Civic News. The PPP is of the view that this is clearly an attempt by its intellectual authors to reopen old wounds, to push the PPP against the Venezuelan people, and to revise long established and recognized historical facts. The PPP will not fall into this trap. Chedi Jagan, in a speech in 1968 in the National Assembly, had this to say, quote, "It is important to note that the minister tried to paint Venezuela as the enemy. But let us not fool the people of this country by shouting how wicked the Venezuelan people and government are, because the Venezuelan Leone government today is a puppet of the government of the United States. Let us put them together so that the people of Guyana know where they stand." End of quote. Chedi Jagan led the first official delegation to Venezuela in 1958. During that visit, he held unofficial talks with all the political parties who were signatories to a power-sharing agreement known as the Punto Fija Pact between the leaders of the three main parties, Betancourt, Leone, and Arcaya. According to Jagan, quote, "Discussions with all the parties individually and jointly revealed that they would neither renounce or resurrect the claim on Guyana's territory because they felt this was a political question, and no party wanted to put itself in a position where it could be attacked for being unpatriotic, and not resurrect it because they regarded Guyana then as a friendly country with a friendly government." End of quote. Later, however, when Arcaya left the alliance, Betancourt and later Leone took Venezuela more to the right and closer to U.S. foreign policy. Thus, the connivance to scuttle the 1899 Arbitral Award and the opportunistic signing of the Geneva Agreement by the Bonham government to grab independence and the establishment of the Mixed Commission, which the PPP opposed from the outset. The PPP maintains that the Civic News expose comes at a time that makes its publication deeply suspicious and profoundly shady. It is certainly not intended to promote good neighborly relations between our two countries. On the contrary, it is a journalistic expression of Granger's efforts to keep the cauldron boiling, using the PPP as firewood for so doing. The PPP will remain vigilant to these subterfuges and intrigues, and will exert every effort to prevent them from succeeding. End of quote. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party continues to pay close attention to the extravagant spending expedition the APNU-AFC coalition has embarked on since assuming office. The APNU-AFC is currently doling out millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to make state houses, quote-unquote, comfortable for the upper bureaucratic class officials. But it is these very houses which PPP officials occupied, one time temporarily or otherwise, for 23 years, without a single complaint. The PPP, while in power, conserved upon state resources by choosing not to waste taxpayers' money on fancying up state houses. This is a demonstration of the values of the PPP as against those upper class and big shots in the APNU-AFC government. For the PPP, what mattered most was the work the party was doing while in government, whereas for the APNU-AFC, what matters to them is the luxurious conditions in which they need to live and not the work they have been elected to do. Following the May 11th general and regional elections, the spending extravaganza began with the public official swearing in of Mr. Granger, followed by his multi-million-dollar inauguration, the victory parties, the luxury trips, and the birthday party at Campagana, and the list goes on. This is what the Granger administration is doing with taxpayers' dollars. While the nation suffers as a result of floods, the persistent witch hunting of public servants, and the lack of any viable economic plan by the government to take the country forward. From all indications, we are returning to vintage Burnhamism. One may recall the spurious accusations this very APNU-AFC coalition made against the PVPC when in office about unauthorized spending of taxpayers' money. Now that they are in a position to make this information public, they should do so immediately. The PVP calls on the Granger administration to state how much money is being spent by the government without parliamentary approval, and to state as well the areas in which these monies are being spent. Thank you.
There are the two statements. Now, take questions based on the statement, right? From the statement first. Who will do the first? Michael? Michael, Adam?
On the Venezuelan issue, you said that government is being treated or are being used as a puppet of the administration.
As a concubine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also talked about relations. The PPP has historically been associated with more socialist regimes, Cuba, Venezuela, while the U.S. leans in a more capitalist direction. Do you see Guyana shifting the kind of foreign relations that it fosters in terms of policy-wise?
No, I wouldn't say we haven't seen any marked shift as yet, because even while in the opposition, the APNU-AFC was known to desist from making any major foreign policy statements on any of the international developments of great significance that took place while they were in the opposition. Now they're in the government, the same situation obtains. So it is difficult to discern actually what is the major tenets of this government's foreign policy. All that we've been hearing about is the position vis-a-vis Venezuela and Mercosur, and visits overseas, and who is on the ambassadorial high commissioner list and who isn't, and rather routine and mundane matters.
Given Dr. Jagan's ideals, do you see the party supporting a shift towards not ending but reducing or limiting its collaborations with countries like Venezuela in favor of countries like the U.S.?
The PPP has always tried its best as an opposition party and as a ruling party, within recent times particularly, to maintain a kind of a balance in terms of its relations with the American people, government, and with the Venezuelan people and government as well. And this is manifested in the call by Dr. Jagan for a new global human order, which, if you read that carefully, you will see how carefully he balances the foreign policy interests of the People's Progressive Party in and out of government within recent times, in respect of the United States, the Western countries, industrialized states, the developing countries, and those in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Right. On that last thing on the issue, though, the fact Venezuela and the U.S.'s tensions can't be ignored. And you talk
Venezuela
about,
what?
and the U.S., their tensions can't be ignored.
Uh-huh.
And you talk about the Estados Unidos being a puppet, but do you not see maybe, let's say the current administration wants to have close relations with the U.S., and it gives them an edge over Venezuela?
Well,
Using
some of these things are so cloudy, it's difficult actually to discern. All things are possible, you know, but I wouldn't say they're bright and beautiful at the same time. The Granger administration might very well be pushing to foster good relations with the United States. If you take what Mr. Granger has said in terms of his public statements, one time he said he's reaching out a hand of friendship to Venezuela. Another time he says he's going to Mercosur, or he attended the Mercosur summit with a view to, you know, building relations with South American countries and so forth. So they may be moving in that direction, but this would not be unusual because we saw this same foreign policy position adopted by the Barnum administration between 1964 and the 1970s, when it shifted dramatically to what was then described as an anti-imperialist position.
Gordon Mosley, News Source. Mr. Rohi, sir, do you think that PPP can really talk about spending and use of state resources? When Mr. Jagdeo became president, they repaired Herdmanston House, I think the Bidco House in Queenstown, and State House to hundreds of millions of dollars before we moved into those three properties. And also, when your government left office, you had ministers in $50 million vehicles, fixing teeth for $2.1 million.
Fixing what?
Teeth for $2.1 million, and spending $100 million on a man who was undying. So do you think the party can really talk about government spending or state spending when your party even brought in Lexus just before the elections for the president?
Which president?
Well, he got knocked out, Mr. Rabatar, but there were a new Lexus was imported to be used as a presidential ride.
That last one I'm not aware of.
It is parked.
All right, I'm saying I'm not aware of it.
But do you think the party
But hold on,
can
yes.
really talk about state spending
Let's
the comfort
examine.
of the president?
Let's examine each one. Let's examine each one because you know sometimes we paint a broad brush and then we get a distorted picture of what is it we're actually talking about. I am speaking fundamentally about state houses around the country, right? Where government ministers might have to go to overnight or to spend some time while they're on outreaches and things like that. I think when they spoke about, when Harman and Trotman spoke about state houses, I think he was referring to the state houses in the various regions. I'm not so sure he was talking to the actual state house at Main Street. That building is constantly under renovations because of the, you know, the fact it's made of wood and things like that. The others are made of wood too. But I mean a house where the president of the republic lives, I think ought to be of a certain standard. I am talking about the state houses per se. You're going off and talking about Lexus and about vehicles and about fixing teeth and, you know, I don't think we could mix apples with oranges.
You were talking about
such.
spending. You were talking about
Yes,
spending.
I know, but each one of those issues, some of them are humanitarian, some are medical. Each one of them has a justification which cabinet considered and decided that resources must be released for them in a normal situation. In this situation of abnormalcy, where only 1/3 of the budget relative to each government agency and department is authorized to be spent, we have absolutely no idea of how much money is being spent and on what. You may recall that during the period of prorogation, the PPP came under constant attacks by Mr. Greenwich and others, claiming, and particularly Kaichur News, claiming that money was being spent on all sorts of things. We're saying now that they're in the government, let them reveal what are these things that monies were spent on unauthorizedly and to have it published. They're in a position to do so.
Again, to the question, do you think the party can fairly complain about spending on trips overseas, complain about...
Yes, I think so. I don't see any problem with that
When the former
because...
president spent $7 million
On what?
a trip to somewhere in Europe?
London.
London?
How much this president spend on the trip to Ethiopia?
I don't know, but did the former president $7 million at a spouse?
No. You should find out how much was spent on this recent trip to Ethiopia.
But that was a state trip, a state visit, an official conference.
It doesn't matter. It's state resources you're talking about. You yourself said we're talking about state resources. So if we're talking about state resources, and if you want to get down into the details, then obviously we have to make that kind of comparative analysis.
And sir, with regards to Venezuela, you said that the government would have made a number of blunders. This Venezuelan issue is a problem not specific to any one government. It has been ongoing for decades. What do you think this new government should be doing differently? You yourself would have served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a number of years as a foreign minister. What do you think they're doing bad, and what advice would you give to them in terms of doing it differently?
Well, in the first place, you know, when this problem arose in respect of the talk about the Exxon Mobil exploration ship, or whatever it is called outside there, the government of the PPPC, in my humble opinion, would not have taken the measures that this government took in respect of Conviasa, the plane that flew between Port Ordaz and Georgetown. They took a measure that was inexcusable and unnecessary and appeared to be a kind of a retaliation by not allowing the Conviasa planes to land in Guyana because of certain charges which were due. I think in the interest of good neighborly relationships, those issues should have been negotiated. You don't just unilaterally declare airline non grata in your jurisdiction. That's number one. So that's the first economic blunder. The next blunder was in respect to the Petro-Caribbean agreement, and we've said a lot about that, so I don't need to go into the details. We consider the steps that they took to deal with Petro-Caribbean to be an economic blunder. We also saying that there are a number of agreements of a bilateral nature between Guyana and Venezuela, which have been signed and which have potential to develop or to generate closer bilateral technical assistance and economic cooperation between the two countries. They have virtually jettisoned, torpedoed those agreements, and they're not looking at them. So what you're hearing now is a lot of, talk that is characterized, as I said in the statement, by jingoism as well as by belligerence, and you're not hearing or seeing any effort at dialogue. You're not hearing or seeing any effort at overcoming the hurdles. I think it was Winston Churchill who once said that in the nature of diplomatic relations between countries, it's better that a jar than to war. But we're not seeing that here in Guyana. And these are the people who claim to be the diplomats par excellence in relation to Guyana-Venezuela relations. I think diplomacy has to be practiced in a different way. Diplomacy has to do with toning down, exerting every effort at toning down the relationship, even though the adversary would have adopted the position that you are against, or you're not favorably disposed to
in all
agreeing
fairness,
to.
Venezuela is not open to talks, even if the current administration did make, or did
I
advance
never
stronger
heard, did
efforts.
Maduro say they're not open to talks?
He wasn't willing to meet with President Granger when he went to Mercosur.
Well, I did not,
And he canceled
by the
his
way,
trip to CARICOM
by the way, I did not hear anything from Granger about what took place between the Guyana delegation and the Venezuelan delegation during the CARICOM summit. We've heard nothing. Did they meet? And if they met, what did they discuss? Same thing in Brasilia at the Mercosur summit. Did they meet? Did they discuss? and what is it they discuss. We did not hear if bilateral meetings were held in Addis Ababa, if bilateral meetings were held in the United States, and if those meetings were held, what came out of those meetings. The nation ought to know. The nation ought to know. So these are the kind of searching questions we need to have answers to in respect to Guyana's bilateral relations with Venezuela, as well as the search for a solution and for support and solidarity from other countries by Guyana.
But sir, do you think it is sending a bad message or a bad signal when the PPP comes out with a statement complaining about Guyana's end, but up until now we're yet to see a statement from the PPP definitively criticizing Venezuela for those two decrees, and from statements made by the Venezuelan foreign minister and the Venezuelan president? We're yet to see that. We saw something from the PYO, but nothing from the party's leadership with regard to those decrees from Venezuela. So are you sending a bad signal that you're choosing party over national interest?
No, we're not, because anyone who is acquainted with the history of this party, anyone who is acquainted with the history of this PPP, there are volumes upon volumes of material that one can read, which states unequivocally and makes it politically clear what is the position of the PPP in respect of Venezuela's claim, in respect of the Leone decree, in respect of the Maduro decree, in respect of all the maneuvers that Venezuela took in respect to the claim of Guyana's territory. There are tons of information available. So recently, statements have been made by party and other leaders on this matter. So if the present generation of journalists are not acquainted and are not able to do the research in respect of what is the position of the PPP from 1958 to now, in respect to all these matters, then I would humbly encourage them and respectfully encourage them to do the research.
But we're seeing on the Venezuelan side, the Venezuelan opposition even moving to parliament with statements and moving to parliament with motions with regards to the Essequibo. And if my memory serves me right, the Essequibo enjoys, the PPP enjoys the support of the Essequibo. The same Essequibo enjoys the support of the Essequibo politically. So shouldn't you be even more concerned that they're talking about sharing out ID cards, they're talking about all of these things, and the party appears to be upset that it's in opposition?
Upset with whom? We're upset with the government that they're mishandling. That's what we were upset about. Mm-hmm. We are upset with this government about the mishandling of the diplomatic bilateral relation between those two countries. That's where our beef is.
But you were invited
they're mishandling
to talks.
It.
You were invited to talks and you decided not to go.
We have a right to decide not to go.
Do you think it's making the party look weak nationally?
No, sir. No, not at all.
Sir,
not at all.
Or let's move on, Adam.
Sir, why is it that you are refusing to believe that the events to which you attribute spending, the birthday party, the inauguration, the government said that those were funded by private individuals, and they said so repeatedly. Why are you disputing that, sir? And
I don't. Let me ask you something, Mr. Harris. Whatever the government say is the truth and nothing else but the truth. Are you saying that?
no,
That because Granger, are you no? Hold on a minute. Are you saying? I don't want it to be reported that Mr. Hui got worked up on this, because I know how we always get things. Are you saying that whatever Mr. Granger or whatever Mr. Harmon says is the whole truth and nothing else but the truth? And therefore, I don't have a right to question it? Are you saying that?
No.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Why are you disputing the statement?
Because the PPP has a right to dispute any statement coming out from this government, this coalition government. We have a right to dispute it. And not only for the sake of the right to dispute it, we will dispute statements with what we consider to be logical and cogent arguments to justify our position, our disputation.
All right. The other thing, I'm going to push that with you. The other thing that we want to talk about is the issue of state houses. Now, when the PPP was in government, the ministers chose to fly in and fly out because you said there was no suitable accommodation outside.
Who were those ministers?
Oh, you went to find out all you. Include when you stayed at Gaisupo once, but outside of that, you traveled, you flew in and you flew out of the regions where you went. And that would have cost more eventually than spending money on the State House. Why are you so
Where did we flew in and flew out for outreaches, if I may ask?
Escobar Coast.
We flew in there?
Yes.
That's not true.
Chief, you talking about the recent one. I'm
That
talking
is not-
about you being there. I
Comrade.
went back to Jack the time, and I know
Comrade.
because I traveled with you.
Comrade,
Yes, we-
I have
No.
been, you don't have to believe me just like how I don't have to believe what Granger and Harmon says. But I can swear to an affidavit that on all the outreach meetings, the PPP ministers never flew into any of them. When we went to the outreach meeting at, what's the name of that resort, the Esquimalt? Mainstay. We all traveled by boat. We all traveled by boat.
Including Barajagio?
Yes, we traveled by this boat owned by Jad Rahman. I am saying to you, we traveled with a jet boat. We traveled with a jet boat owned by Jad Rahman. At that place, what's the name of that road where you go? Road and Russ.
Yes.
That's where we took the boat
Yes.
and went down.
That
Two
was
of
the
them.
last time, Chief.
Where did you stay?
We stayed at the same resort.
It's pricey.
No, it's not.
That was the last time. But as Borby's side,
We couldn't have stayed at State House.
because there was none.
There's no State House in Anna Regina.
No, thank God you won't sleep there.
Who said it? I sleep there all the time.
No, man. Chief, you said
Excuse me? Excuse me, Mr. Harris, let me be serious here.
I'm serious.
Mr. Harris, let's be serious here. Every time I go to the Esquimalt Coast, I stay at the State House at Anna Regina. I have absolutely no complaints about that. Whether it's a day, 2 days, the last time I went up there was immediately after the elections.
Right.
I stayed there as well.
And the condition was all right.
Who paid when you got the last
We
time of
paid,
election?
the
All right.
PPP paid.
Borby's, you've been known to fly, Chief. Rupunoni, you flew.
Flight to Borbis
Yes.
for outreach.
Yes.
Damn, what you get that.
Anyhow.
Come on. Why don't we just keep that for them, boys? Sir? Let me keep the one for them, boys. Sir.
Zena.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, given what you said about the Venezuelan issue, is the opposition supportive of the stance that the president has taken to bring the issue to the various countries and various conferences that he has attended? And do you see the
I have to be careful how I answer that, you know, because I know how you always twist things.
Not again.
I'm telling you, because if I say yes, you know what will come out of the headline? Rohi supports Granger's trips.
well, that is
for that.
No,
So-
no, not the trip.
Do you
I want
agree?
to understand if it's the party supports the stance of taking the issue to the international community and making it international. And also, do you support or go against the notion of...
Let me answer that this way. Based on our experience in government. While we were in the government, we worked with the good officer process. That is within the context of the United Nations. While we were at the Commonwealth, I was the minister at the time who worked feverishly to have the Commonwealth set up a group to deal with Guyana-Venezuela relations. If you check the records, you will see who was the foreign minister at the time that worked within the Commonwealth to have that group established. So within the multilateral context, United Nations and the Commonwealth, fora which Guyana-Venezuela issues are discussed, as well as within the meaning of the Caribbean community as well. So recently we have Mercosur. At the time we didn't have that issue arising at Mercosur. At UNASUR we didn't have that at the time, and there was no need to take it there because it didn't reach to the levels where it was necessary to take those things there.
So given the continued ongoing threat from Venezuela, do you then support the notion of the president taking this matter into consideration?
I'm saying to you that all the countries of the world are gathered either at the OAS, and by the way, Greenwich went to address the OAS. We don't know what happened there. There's no report about what transpired there. All that we heard is what he said at that meeting. We heard what Greenwich is reported to have said at the meeting, but we don't know what the other people said at the meeting in respect to his presentation. I, as foreign minister, made several presentations to the OAS General Council. Usually after presentation, the other representatives who may wish to comment on the matter would be given an opportunity to speak by the chairman at the time of the meeting of the General Council. We don't know what happened. To report only to us in the national media what the foreign minister said, I don't think that's sufficient. That's mainly government propaganda. We need to hear what the members of the OAS said. So that's one, the OAS theater, United Nations theater, the Commonwealth theater, and the CARICOM theater. There's not a country that is not in any of those. So that's the place where you have to do the work.
Minister Roy, a follow-up, being around the Culture News. You said just now that the PPP utilized the good officer process from the United Nations. What sort of benefits did you reap from that process? And don't you think that it's time to move on to something else to see how we can better what we've last achieved with relations to the Guyana-Venezuela controversy?
Well, first of all, in respect to the usefulness, the efficacy of the good officer process, I think that while we were in the government, it worked well.
But the controversy continued.
During my tenure as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I worked with Mr. Alistair McIntyre. I worked with the gentleman that died from the ACS, from Jamaica. I don't recall his name now. May his soul rest in peace. And I worked with Mr. Ramkaran as well from the Guyana side. So in our meetings with Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General at the time, and then the other Secretary Generals of the United Nations, they all helped to, moderate any difficulties or tensions that we may have had at the time. They also facilitated visits by foreign ministers of Venezuela to Guyana and visits of foreign ministers from Guyana to Venezuela, as well as exchange visits of heads of states and other delegations, etc., etc. And that's, I think, the kind of diplomacy that we need to engage in, what we would describe as people-to-people diplomacy. You need to invite academics, those from the University of Guyana to meet with those from the universities in Venezuela. You need to invite businessmen. You need to invite journalists to meet with you, local journalists, to talk things and so forth. You need to invite, NGOs. You need to invite, faith-based organizations. All those things need to happen. It can't be only at the government level these relations are conducted. So the people-to-people diplomacy plays a very important role in the promotion of good neighborly relations between cultural exchanges, things like that, and tourism, exposing people to each other's peculiarities and so forth. All those things are important.
Given that you oppose to Venezuela's action against Guyana, why is it that you're so upset with the Starboard News report that merely supports your opposition to Venezuela? Or you should support the opposition?
Well, I think you need to read the statement more carefully after the press conference, Mr. Harris, because in that statement there are a lot of things that are said that are not explicitly said.
Also, sir, the Venezuelan
The question that I asked is very pertinent, and I think you all in your quiet moment as journalists should ask that question. Why is that being published at this time? Why?
The Venezuelan media has also reported.
The what?
The Venezuelan media has also reported that President Granger's recent visit, or the visit to Washington, was seen as yeah.
Was seen as what?
provocative, yeah.
Was seen as what?
Provocation.
Was seen as what?
Seen as a
Provocation.
Oh,
Yes. I would like to find out if you feel the same way about that.
the Venezuelan media?
Yeah.
No, well, I don't respond to media reports. I respond to what the government
From
would
the
be
president,
saying.
he's saying that the last.
No. From Venezuela I'm talking about.
Yes, you're talking about government to government dialogue and also people to people relations, right?
Mm.
In the context of dealing with these 4 regional international bodies. CARICOM a lot of the CARICOM member states benefit from the Petro-Caribbean agreement.
Mhm.
They also have said the same thing that they did the last 2 years when former president was there and when President Granger was there earlier
What do you
this
mean
year.
by said the same thing?
The language was the exact same thing. We support Guyana. We reject any threats to Guyana's sovereignty. Same language, nothing different, no concrete action from CARICOM. That's one. The UN good officer process, when the last good officer died, the former foreign affairs minister said, well,
That's
we're not
Mr.
gonna-
Gairvan. I
Yes,
don't
Mr.
remember his
Gairvan,
name,
right.
Mr. Gairvan. Yeah.
Rodriguez, she said that we're not going to go ahead with the process because it's not yielding any results. I think they were waiting on a timeline plan from Venezuela, which never materialized, and then you had the whole escalation of tensions right now. But the deliberations in these groups have not really delivered anything substantial.
Which groups?
The UN, CARICOM, I'm not sure we're going on the OAS at the moment, but UN and CARICOM in particular, it's not delivered anything substantial to help address this controversy.
Because it's a very complex issue. And they can only go as far as multilateralism allow them to go. Multilateralism has its limitations as a diplomatic tool to achieving certain objectives. Because if you understand multilateral diplomacy, agreements that are reached have to be hammered out by more than one country. And each country has its own interests. You see? Take, for example, that's why you're having this problem with the candidate for the Commonwealth Secretariat. You see, all that has to be done within a multilateral context. So, multilateral diplomacy takes countries as far as the efforts of all can go. Because they are different interests. There are different interests. The interests of all the countries in a multilateral setting may not be the same as Guyana. But Guyana is part of that multilateral effort. But it has to move with its partners. And in moving with its partners, compromises have to be struck in relation to language, in relation to position, in relation to views and perceptions and all these different things. And that is why I saw someone made a statement to the effect that the language that emanated in respect of the CARICOM statement was a watered down one. Well, that's a judgment call. I can't say because I never really saw what was originally presented. Because if you say something was watered down, it means what was originally presented is different from what came out of the process. And I'm not aware of what originally was
so
presented.
you're saying that given the limitations of the multilateral negotiations,
Yes.
you agree that there needs to be more done from the current administration regarding reaching out for international support?
Well, put it this way. Right now
Or
there's
done differently?
a stalemate. On the one hand, Guyana is saying that it's done with the good officer process. On the other hand, Venezuela is saying no.
No, Venezuela's saying the same thing. Venezuela's approached the UN to put back into place the good officer mechanism. That has been their last position.
Guyana, from my understanding, position is we're through with the good officer process. Venezuela is not. Venezuela is not. So you have a standoff there. How is that going to be solved? There's no way on earth that that's going to be solved in any other way other than through diplomatic efforts.
Court.
It cannot be. You don't understand this thing, man. I'm about the court. I am talking about one position saying good officer process, another one is saying no good officer process. Now, I'm not so sure whether Venezuela is calling for a juridical settlement either. The government of Guyana is calling for a juridical settlement. So long as you have differences between two nations on what ought to be the approach for a settlement or a common position, diplomacy has to take place.
Under the Geneva Agreement is the UN Secretary.
Don't talk about the Geneva Agreement. That's a very complicated thing.
Well, that's under the good offices process. as
Well, I
It's
know all of
important to
that, but
talk
I'm
about
not
good
talk,
offices
I am not
process. You have to
discussing the
talk about
Geneva Agreement at
All right,
this
let's
point.
move on. Next.
And another issue, sir, outside of the...
For example, if you notice Suriname, when Guyana decided to approach the International Court in respect to the Suriname issue, the delimitation, yes, both countries had to agree to approach the court. And both agreed. Both agreed.
Sir,
Yeah.
on Saturday, the Prime Minister said that he felt you were sending him a message in one of your statements during the campaign, to quote exactly according to him, that who is not dead would be badly wounded. And he said that he thinks that there's a criminal syndicate attached to the PPP, and there was some scheme being hooked up to that may have ended in his death, maybe. How would you respond to this? And could you also say if Sean Hines indeed sought the help of PPP, if he did come into Freedom House last week for help when the police was looking for him?
Nagamoto's statement is a big joke. It's a huge joke. If there's anyone in this country who knows Nagamoto as best as I do, as best as possible, politically and otherwise, I'm one of them. I'm one of them. So I wouldn't take Nagamoto's statement. He's good at what he's saying there. He's good at spinning things. He's good at concocting things. He has a very, what you call it, wildly imaginative view of things.
On Sean
So-
Hines, sir, the
So-
relationship
so-
between the
Dismiss
PPP and
Nagamoto.
Sean Hines.
No.
What's the relationship between the PPP and Sean Hines?
There's no relationship between the People's Progressive Party and Sean Hines.
Did he
None
come into
whatsoever.
Freedom House
He has
recently?
said he's been here a number of times, even last week.
I saw him here sitting. He claimed that he was waiting to see someone. I never asked him who was the someone. I just left and went away.
But are you concerned now? You were the Minister of Home Affairs. This is the man who is now admitting to being a
No,
part
no,
of
no,
a
no,
death
no.
squad.
Hold on a minute. When you say I was the Minister of Home Affairs, what are you linking me to?
No, I'm saying you were the Minister of Home Affairs in terms of national security. This is the man who is now
Yeah,
saying...
you gotta be very careful here, you know, because
You're the last Minister of Home Affairs.
no, but when you say I'm the last Minister of Home Affairs, you see,
In terms of security, you're seeing this man there who has been in the court on a number of murder charges.
been where?
In the court on
Uh-huh.
a number of murder charges.
Uh-huh.
He's been linked to death squads before. He's now admitting to that. And you were admitting that you saw
my
him
friend,
last
my
week.
friend.
Weren't you worried as a GS?
My friend, listen to me. Number one, a man is innocent until he's proven guilty. Number two, a person has what is called pre-trial liberty. And number three, there are persons who go to court and they're acquitted. Now, if you see a man like that walking around the place, whether it's a Sean Hines or a Barn Hines or whatever the case may be, how are you going to judge him?
But he was in the party headquarters.
It doesn't matter. This is a public building.
Yeah. Did he provide security details for you or for
Me?
members of the party?
Me?
Well,
Anyone
for
in
you,
the
for
party.
anybody.
No, when you say, man, listen to me. You know, I gotta be careful when I answer you fellas, you know, because I see something different that's coming to
For your
in the
party.
news afterwards.
Forget you, for your party. Did he provide security, or was he part of your
Not as,
political party's
not
security detail?
not as far as I, as the General Secretary, am aware.
He's claiming that the PPP gave him the security contract for
He
the
could,
party
t-
during the
Mr.
elections
Hines,
period.
first of all, let me say, as far as I'm aware, as General Secretary of this party, up to the time when I assumed this position, I don't know about any security being provided by Sean Hines for the People's Progressive Party. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Hines can say what he wants to say. He's free to say what he wants to say, but we can also dispute what he's claiming. There's no absoluteness in the truth insofar as anybody in the earth is concerned.
Do you know
Truth
why
is
he was
relative.
at Freedom House recently?
No, I have no, I just told you. I saw him sitting there. He said he came to meet someone. I said, oh, and I left.
You don't know the someone.
No, I never asked.
So are you concerned that he's made allegations against the party?
I gotta be careful I answer that again because the way it's gonna be reported that he concerned about this and that.
Sir, hand it off.
And that has a
All
particular
right, let me get one person.
that has a particular connotation.
Sir,
Has there ever been any association between the party and Hines ever in the past? Any association?
I am not aware of that.
So you're categorically saying that?
No, don't say what I'm saying, man.
No, I'm trying to
You-
understand what you're saying.
Excuse me?
I'm trying to
I didn't parler français, no habla español. I said I am not aware of that. Finito, blanchao, se acabó.
So, is the
Sir,
party
sir,
concerned, sir, about the statement
I
that
don't
he made?
want, with due respect to get into this, is the party concerned? Because if I answer that to say yes, we're concerned, you will report it that Rohi is concerned about that.
He has
And I'm
admitted,
concerned about the way you guys express my concern.
he has admitted, sir, though, he has admitted on TV and camera that he was a part of a death squad.
Yes.
What do you think ought to be the response of the Guyana Police Force?
As a former Home Affairs Minister, I would leave that to Mr. Passad.
No, but as the party general secretary.
No, not on this one.
The PPP are worried?
You gone again?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Roy, moving on
No,
from the
no,
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 I'm saying on that one, I would leave that to the Commissioner of Police to answer.
No, but sir, this man was in your space.
My what?
Space, the PPP's headquarters, Freedom House.
No, that is not true.
Where was he? He was in Freedom House?
I was sitting downstairs there.
What is in Freedom House?
All right, let's move on
No,
from
but
this
I'm
matter.
saying, and the same evening he appears on an evening
You know,
newscast
the
admitting to these
way
things.
in which these matters are reported is that you would convey the impression that the man was walking around the building.
You think of the cool he had of?
All right, Gordon, let's move on. Listen, let's move on from this matter. Any other issue?
Yes,
No.
another issue. In relation to the Crummy Wing killing, the police said that two past government officials,
To what?
To former government.
former government officials, were questioned for the murder of Crummy Wing. Could you say who were these two and if you were one of them?
I think
Because I know you usually say I could speak for myself, so I'm not sure if you just want to
Look,
speak for yourself.
the best person to answer that question is the person who interviewed them. Go to that source.
All right.
Okay, final question, please. Sir, the government recently said that they will be soon reviewing the radio licenses. PPP has 5. Are you concerned that these can be
PPP has 5 radio licenses.
Yeah,
9 to
frequency.
5 behind the
5
Where?
lunch on Yeti show, Shenenga show,
Who?
the other lady, Union Lady Borkia. We waited for here, Rohi and company.
Sir, are you concerned that these may be taken away, and is the PPP involved in any action to secure the frequencies that it already has?
No, if it comes to that, when we come to that bill, we'll cross it. We haven't got anything illegally. Everything has been, all the properties and all the services that the PPP has procured have been done rather illegally in accordance with the laws of Ghana.
But do you think a political party should be allowed to own its own radio station for
5 frequencies.
its own programming? Don't you think that is a bit worrying?
It has happened. It has happened. There's no, and like I said, the key thing is whether it's legal.
All right, thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen.
By the way,
PPP never own no
I
radio
have-
station, why? What do you?
by the way, I have
This new guy
here.
never own the thing. This new
I
guy
have here to the letter is our proposal. Let me read you what the letter said. It said, Dear Mr. Jordan, subsequent to your meeting with our delegation on Friday, July 24th at the Ministry of Finance, the PVP is now submitting its views on its inclusion for the 2015 estimates. The proposed inclusions of the PPPC are as follows. 1. The entirety of the publicly proclaimed Granger 100-day plan to be implemented by the government of Guyana within the fiscal year 2015. So we are sending to them, to Jordan, the 100-day plan of the Granger administration for implementation as part of our recommendations. 2. After the government of Guyana inspection of the PPPC 2015 manifesto with regard to the included undertakings to respond to the economic situation affecting rice, sugar, mining, and others, we are attaching those measures also for inclusion. What we did was to extract from our manifesto those sections which we believe the government should consider for inclusion in the 2015 budget.
Okay. Mr. Roy, 2 questions on that.
So please,
One,
parties are
with you now having consultations with the government, you no longer view it as de facto. And 2, with you saying that you want the implementation of the 100-day plan, are you saying that it's a good plan?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.